We have a quorum. We can call the meeting to order. What are we, 7:07? Perfect. All right, first order of business is to welcome our new board member, our new Fane appointee, Abby Dillon. Some of you may know Abby from past dealings. I know I do. But welcome to the board. We could introduce ourselves to you so you know who you're working with here.
Great.
All right, you want to start down there? Kai?
Kai Quigley, I'm a junior.
I'm Dominic Schmidt, I'm a senior.
I'm Bill Anton, I'm the superintendent. Drew Hazelden.
Emily Long, new thing?
Joe Winrick from Townsend.
Twyla Holden from Townsend.
Kelly Warner from New Bank.
Caroline Pearson, Jamaica.
All right. Welcome. So anyway,
Is Abby replacing someone who left?
Jeremy Kellaway did
Oh,
not
didn't
file,
know.
so there's been an
Oh.
open slot from New Fane
Okay.
since town meeting.
Okay.
Abby was just appointed.
We also have a Brookline on.
We also have an open spot from Brookline, and no one has stepped forward to be appointed from there, so, you know.
We're all working on her.
No, I wouldn't work on Lindell,
Why not?
because
I have no shame.
I
I will go after you. You can say, no, I know you know how.
yeah. Okay, so anyway, moving right along. Under additions and corrections to the agenda, I know we need to add under old business the solar contract. We need to just have an authorization to sign that. It was on last month's agenda, and it got left off. And the other thing is the credit card's under new business still. What was the other thing, Bill?
Audit engagement.
Oh, the audit engagement. That was also on last month's agenda, but did not get taken care of because of no quorum. So anyway, those are the, anybody else have an addition or correction to the agenda? Okay. Members of the public, are you all here for a specific issue, I'm guessing? You want to be heard under that part of the meeting, or you want to, speak your piece now? Your choice.
I'm here to talk about the budget. I don't know.
Well, if you're all here for budget things, I
Yeah.
would ask you to hold your comments until we get to the budget. Correspondence, anybody got anything? No? Nobody writes to us anymore. All right, new business. We talked about this a few meetings ago. We need a motion to approve a credit card application so that Leland and Gray can pay its bills in a more timely manner. Much of the purchasing now, as I understand it, is done online, and people are using personal credit cards and getting reimbursed. There are issues around personal gain from that because you get miles and rewards and things, and there's also a delay in the reimbursement process, and it would be a lot simpler if those school purchases were just made on a Leland and Gray credit card. But in order to do that, they need a motion and a actual signature from the board.
Motion to approve the credit card authorization.
And I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that, folks? Questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the business card resolution form, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. All right, there we go. We'll do the audit engagement letter next just because it's right here. Pretty much a formality. The board needs to, authorize, who signs here?
You are the manager.
Yeah, needs to authorize the chair to sign this, to engage, yeah, I got it.
Your manager.
I'm the management, right? Or am I governance, Bill? And you're management?
You can
Bob's
wait, just get the authorization, you can
Yeah.
wait for Lori.
Okay, one of us, we need to sign the letter to engage the auditors for our annual audit. The process, it's every, 2 or 3 years it's put out to bid. It was not put out to bid this year, but we've used Bonadio and Company before. They've done a fine job, and we've been asked to approve that. So we would need a motion to approve the auditor engagement letter.
I will make a motion to approve the audit
Second.
engagement letter.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Anyone like to look over the letter?
just as a reminder, I think we were told that it goes out to bid next year?
Yeah, that's my recollection as well.
That is correct.
Okay. All in favor of approving the audit engagement letter, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay, and the last thing under new business is a quick discussion. Seeing as how the two items that we've just taken care of have been on previous agendas and we've had difficulty getting a quorum because of not having enough members and having, personal problems and things. I wanted to have a quick discussion about something the WCSU board has done, which is basically create an executive committee. The executive committee can function, takes over some of those board functions. They can approve bills and pay orders. They could have authorized the credit card, signed the audit engagement. They don't approve budgets. They don't review superintendents. They don't actually, it's limited powers, but it does allow for the officers acting, there's the three of us, and it would take a majority of the officers acting to actually do the things that generally keep the school running. I've had a couple of conversations with the VSBA lawyer, and if the board chooses to delegate that authority to that smaller body, it is okay. So all we would need is a motion to authorize the officers of this board to act in the same manner as the executive committee and the WCSU board. That way it's defined and written down and we can actually produce a written document. We don't have to fool around with giving you what the powers are again.
So moved.
Wow, thank you.
So we should move so we can talk.
Is there a second? Second. Okay. All right. It's been moved and seconded to basically to grant the officers of the Leland and Gray Board the powers similar to the executive committee of the WCSU board. So I'll open it up for discussion. Questions?
So has WCSU board had any issues with that in the past?
I've only been on it for about 3 or 4 years, and
Correct.
I don't know of any. Emily?
No, I
Bill?
know of no issues.
Maybe
Not
we
in
should
15
clarify for the
months,
public who our officers are?
I'm the chairman. Emily is the vice chairman, and Twyla is our clerk.
This is really just to keep the business of the board moving forward, because we've had this issue for 3 months now and not been able to move forward, so.
In the
I feel like
last
it's
6 months, we've
pretty
had
important.
we've had two meetings where we've actually had a quorum. So it's become difficult. I mean,
Very much.
creditors are calling, wondering why bills aren't being paid on time. It's kind of embarrassing. So we really should do something like this. You got a question?
No, I just have a comment, and that I will vote to support this, but I'm not happy about it, honestly. That I understand the reason why. In fact, I have been called up to the school, as you have, and probably Twyla too, trying to pull people together to review things and sign them for the authorized signers. But it's not a good way to do business, and I hope we can. I'm not worried about this because it is limited to what we can do, and I would assume that anything we do will be overseen by the board later. I mean,
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is not to take anything away from the board at all. It's simply to allow and it's not going to be, sort of standard operating procedure to have the officers acting without the board. If we get a quorum at every meeting and the board can act, then the board will continue to act and do this. What it does is it puts this measure in place so that if we have the problem, we aren't scrambling around or just saying, sorry, we can't approve that credit card application because we need a vote.
so can I follow up with one
Sure.
more thing? So if we approve this tonight and the officers need to take action, does that mean that the board will be notified of whatever action the officers have taken? I mean, will you send an email or something, or someone send an email saying that the board has, or at least bring it up at the next meeting if there has ever been
Oh,
any
sure.
action, so that everybody's aware of, if it's just pay orders, that'll come up in the stack.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
yes,
really
I would-
important we get the work done. If payroll doesn't get done and things like that, that's not okay.
Right.
Gotta do it.
Oh, no, we would, I would plan on informing the board at the meeting or by email that, the officers took this action, and, there would be discussion about it at the next meeting if there needed to be. Question?
Yeah, so am I assuming that the executive group would meet, so we schedule a scheduled board meeting with, public warning like we're supposed to, and if there's not enough board members present, then that group could act? Or are we talking about not even having board meetings to deal with this business and just having this group make those decisions?
I was planning that it would be, it would be that smaller group could act in the absence of a quorum, or if we couldn't get a quorum and one of the officers was one of the people who couldn't be there, that we would then warn this smaller meeting, and take the action that was necessary. It's never gonna be, kind of a secret little thing operating behind the scenes, but it would be as necessary, or in place of a board meeting absent a quorum.
So all decisions will show up on a warrant agenda before they're made?
Except for probably approving bills and pay orders. I mean, we've done that. The officers already have, 2 officers can sign off on pay orders, so we've done that in the absence of a quorum. We'll ratify those signatures here tonight, but they were never warned as something that got done. That business just got taken care of. We're just expanding it so that we could have done some of those other things that waited. Anything else? All right. All in favor of the motion to allow the officers to act as a sort of executive committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. Bauman, are you getting all this? Just checking.
I'm missing a beat.
All right, perfect.
Yes.
Good. I love it when technology works. You can vote,
Well, I'm kind of mumbling, I guess.
Okay. All right, well, speak up if you want to be heard.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then we move on to the administrative reports. The students have submitted a written report. You guys want to highlight anything out of that for us?
The soccer season has finished. The boys are 5th in Division III with a record of 9-4-1. The girls are 7th with a record of 8-6-0. There will be division playoffs tomorrow. It got rained out today. We started the Refuse to Use program where kids pledge to not do drugs and alcohol, and they get a season's pass to Stratton. Prom is coming up. The junior class has been working hard. There is now a Thrifty Rebel store. I don't know too much about it, so you're gonna have to talk to more students to really figure out what it's about.
It's basically, it's clothes donations that are put up and available for anybody in the community to take for their children or relatives. So it's called The Store, and you can shop at it, but it's really complicated what you want.
There was music night October 13th in the Dutton Gym. Performances by the music department and whoever wanted to participate. And lastly, Mary Poppins will be playing November 9th through 12th. The drama department has been rehearsing hard. It's going to be a good show.
Nice. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for these guys? Okay. You want to take it out of order, Bill, and let Bob segue into the budget?
Yeah, good. I sent you all a digital copy of the superintendent's report. There's also some hard copies there. I would just like to highlight that today we were visited for Vermont's inaugural integrated field review, which is the Vermont response to the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is a fascinating process that happened today all over our supervisory union. It was housed at Leland and Gray. We had 23 education professionals from 5 different supervisory unions that went through a 2-day training. Bob and I went through the training as well, along with 12 other people in our supervisory union. And they come in the morning, and they all gather here at Leland and Gray, and then they all disperse to all of our buildings for a 3-hour session. They come back for lunch. They go back out and visit all of our schools, a different school, for another 3 hours. They come back and gather. And what they're doing is they're creating what are called evidence statements of what they see. It is not opinion-based. It is purely what they observe or documents that we've provided them, what rises to the top. And then they take that and create a report for us, which will provide 2 commendations and 2 recommendations for our entire SU, along with a ability to see all of the raw data on the evidence statements, which you take that and you combine it with our annual snapshot of our SBAC scores and our graduation rates and our discipline data, and it allows us to kind of get a picture of what our supervisory union and schools are looking like, so that we can target our investments, make plans for the future, check on our initiatives, see if our continuous improvement plans are hitting the areas that we want them to hit. And this is it was a very Vermont response to the Every Student Succeeds Act. Instead of simply looking at standardized data, they really wanted to have a process where peers got to see other peers in action. Just the energy of our SU interacting with the people was fantastic. The feedback that we got today from the people that visited us was we have a very welcoming, vibrant supervisory union. We were very lucky that we had the Deputy Secretary of Education here. So it was a really cool experience, and look forward to kind of seeing what we learned from all of that.
Is that Amy Fowler?
Yes, Amy Fowler.
Can I add on to that, Joe, if you don't mind?
Yo, please.
This is all tied to the EQS, the Education Quality Standards. This is sort of the way that they measure the implementation of that. So the evidence statements that they're writing are really categorized into 5 areas. It's actually on the first dot on my report. Academic proficiency, personalization, high quality staffing, safe and healthy schools, and financial efficiencies. Those are the 5 areas. And then, there's parents interviewed, there's staff interviewed, administrative team interviewed, and students interviewed. And the group that I met with had just come out of the student interview at the time, and I wanted to share this with you guys. They said that our students, and we had a cross-section of kids, were incredibly articulate and welcoming, and we had students give tours of the building. They were just very impressed with the quality of our students in their interactions with them. So these are people that work in other schools or at the AOE or what have you. So wanted to share that because I think our students are getting some big props from this group while they're here.
That's great. Thank you. All right. So, Bill, you need anything else?
Nope.
No? Bob, you good? We can move into the meat of the budget.
One small thing I
Sure.
wanted to add to my report, which is not on there, just to alert you guys that we had a small incident yesterday afternoon, small dumpster fire. So we're not entirely sure still what the cause of that was, but Townsend Fire Department was dispatched and took care of it. So, but just wanted to have you guys in the loop on that.
You take care of it.
Not me personally, but
Bill, nothing's wrecked. It's all good.
yeah, it's all good. But figured you guys might want to know.
I heard that last night when I was there. Okay, thank you. Okay, so next up is the first look at the budget, but before we do that, I know I sent you guys all the memo from Secretary Holcomb on managing staff attrition, along with a number of spreadsheets that you could refer back to, giving you the ratios. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at that and just kind of see where we stand regionally and in the state?
I looked at it, I thought this was helpful.
Which spreadsheet is that?
That was the one
That's
that
the third one,
Bill
right?
sent it to us.
Oh,
The
right.
simple one,
Yes. Thank you.
right? I mean, you guys are looking
It's
at
without the pre-K, I don't know if everybody has
4,000
this.
lines of stuff.
Yeah, I forget when,
Yeah, I like
when
that
did
one
you
better.
send that one, Bill?
A couple
A
days
couple
ago?
days ago?
A couple days ago, yeah. Bill sent that simplified version that just
This
pulls it out.
targets ours specifically.
Only us.
That targets us specifically. But I just,
When you
you know,
sent-
before we dove into this, I mean, this is coming from, you know, the Secretary of Education, and, you know, you can see where the state's leaning on this and the evidence that's there. You know, just figure that ought to be taken into account as we have these discussions. And if anybody wanted to, you know, ask questions, discuss it a little bit, you know, comment, I thought we needed to, you know, do that. Sorry? This is copies of the one that Bill sent.
Joe, are there any extra copies for the public?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of copies.
Pretty
Bill's
good
got them.
I got two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know. Okay. All right,
Just,
go ahead.
I'm happy to, I can't remember if I emailed the whole board or not, but I asked to have this included, because I think it's relevant to the conversations we're gonna be having over the next few months, that's all.
It was not included, but I got the simplified version and I appreciated it, so.
You should have gotten the 3 spreadsheets plus the memo from me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not from Emily.
No, I
No,
didn't send
no.
anything.
Emily
I
asked to
just
put it on
asked-
the agenda as a
Oh,
specific
okay.
item. I figured it was just part of the whole budget process. Emily was like, couldn't make it a second item. So, anyway, I'm sure we'll be referring back to that as we go through the. Yes.
I'm sorry, can I say one thing about it?
You can say it.
This is really important, and it shows us FY '16 and FY '17, basically. I'm looking at the one that you put together,
Yeah.
Bill. But what's really relevant is over time. And so as we move forward with this conversation, if we need to, we actually have the numbers over time, and we may need to refer back to them, but, you know, there's a significant change even in 1 year here. But over time, it's been a bigger change. I just wanted to mention that. It's important to think about it from a long-term perspective, and maybe looking at projections as well.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to put it up on the screen now, but I know we've all seen
No.
the spreadsheet where it talks about where the enrollment numbers go.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so, who wants to take the lead in presenting the budget? Bob, Bill, tag team?
Sure. Well, you have the actual budget. I sent hard copies out that Lori has sent to you guys as well. So I just did a quick, on the back of my packet of my report, there's a sort of an overview. And then there's a little bit more detail about each area, highlighting significant changes. Which is the model we used last year, and you guys seem to enjoy that, so figured I'd replicate that. Yeah. The actual budget one, just make sure you have all the whole budget on in your stapled section, because it seemed like the copier in the back was having some stapling problems. There should be 6
You guys have
pages.
this?
Or 6, numbered 6.
7 pages with
A
that.
cover sheet plus 1 through 6. That's what we should have for the budget. So when we met August, I'm not sure when it was, but I was charged at that point to develop the budget and had October as our target date. The charge, as I recall it, was that we wanted a reduced budget, and it wasn't necessarily a target, but anywhere between reduced and get to the threshold, which was with last year's numbers would have been about $782,000 in reductions. So my window was pretty big. And also to try to limit the impact of programming to kids was the other part. So with those directions in mind, we went at looking at the budget. Another factor that was in early on is that I think most folks probably know that Mel is going to be retiring at the end of the school year. So thinking about how we need to restructure the administrative unit and the implications on that to the counseling department and how all that kind of fits together was something that I also was sort of putting into this. And another piece of information I was given from Lori was that we were anticipating a 25% reduction in title money coming in. And if you remember, the title money that we used this year for 2 instructional coaches. And so with a 25% reduction, we knew that we would have to think about how we were going to fund those positions or whether we were going to reduce those positions. So that was sort of the thinking. I have administrative reorganization, counseling reorganization, reduction of title revenue. That's kind of the starting point for me. So you can see, then of course, we had a $50,000 deficit, which is unaudited at this point, but that's about what we predict it to be for the end of FY17. And that was, I mentioned here in the first paragraph, that July 1 of FY17, we had over $100,000 deficit to start the fiscal year. So that's what we were handed. And I'd love to take full credit for reducing that 100 plus to 50, but I'm pretty sure Lori Garland deserves much of that as well. But that $50,000 deficit has to be absorbed by whatever this is as well. On top of all this is the building, which we've talked about, and at some point there's a point on your meeting to talk about the facilities, and I want to potentially schedule a meeting with the facilities committee while everyone's in the same place at the same time. But thinking about how do we do this while reducing the overall budget, and how do we figure out how we're going to address the needs of the building. So I made my life a little bit easier, and I didn't think about how to address the needs of the building, because I think that the facilities committee has other ideas in mind for that, and we don't have all the information yet. So this budget does not include any contribution to a capital plan, nor does it include any sort of broad sweeping projects that need to get done, other than what we would normally call annual projects, which are the smaller ones. So just keep that in mind. So there's no contribution to the capital plan and no large-scale projects. All right? So I guess I cheated a little bit to get there, but that's how I got there.
Is there a capital plan?
Well, we're waiting for, we have a draft from
Committee.
last year, but we're waiting for that report to come out, and that's why I want to schedule that meeting after that report comes out, so we can use that to drive the development of that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Because they're going to help us do that, I believe. It's part of the service that they provide. So in short, there are some reductions and some additions, which you can see in the first page. In the end, staffing the 2 instructional coaches with that reduction in title funding, I don't think was tenable. So one of those positions will be reduced. Mel, as most of you guys know, is 75% Director of Student Services, which is an administrative position. I don't intend to fill that particular position, so that is on the reduction list as well. We have a 0.6 school social worker on this list. We have 0.3 IT support on this list, having to do with the reorganization of how IT will be done next year. We have a 0.25 reduction in driver's education. And just a quick note on that, it used to be 0.5, and that's one of the additions that you guys made after the adopted budget, which helped create that $100,000 deficit 2 years ago. So I'm just basically putting that back to where it was originally at 0.5. And then there's a 1.0 counseling secretary who resigned the end of middle end of last year, who we did not rehire and are not budgeting for as well. So there's a savings there. In additions, however, without moving forward without having another administrator to help with supervision, evaluation, and professional development opportunities and assessment supervision, I don't think would be wise without having somebody. So my proposal is that we create a dean of academics. That's working title, we'll call it. The idea of that would be that the administrative unit would then be formed of the principal, a dean of students, and a dean of academics. And this particular dean, we would require administrative licensure so that we could do evaluations and supervision. But it wouldn't necessarily need to be a 260-day contract like an assistant principal might likely be. So there's some savings there as well. And then to add, so Mel's other quarter of her job was a school counselor, so my proposal is to add a 0.75 back to that to make a second full-time counselor, to make that whole. So that's sort of the reorganization, restructuring plan. And then as you go through each area of the budget, we can do this section by section if you want. I guess, is that how you guys want to do it? Or do you want to ask questions as you go? Do you want to ask questions about the introduction part? How do you want to do it, John?
Guys, section by section?
Section by section.
Okay.
If we have questions, we'll stop and ask you.
Okay. So this follows along with the budget. So the first page of the budget is a cover sheet which basically highlights the areas, and each area will be highlighted on my narrative, detailed narrative. But you can see, based on this, the bottom line, the bottom of the double line is $143,000 overall reduction in the budget from last year. And so that, you of course, then have to absorb the $50,000 projected deficit, which really brings you in the neighborhood of $93,000 reduction. All right, so the first actual page of the budget starts with the revenue at the top. And I guess Lori would maybe be able to speak to more detail when she arrives about some of these lines, but you will notice line 10 is the estimated reduction in the title, the sub-grant. That's the title money. So that's where that plays out, and I'll reference that later when I get to the point where the coaches are in the budget, so you can see. But that's what that represents. There's other reductions in revenue as well, other places. And Lori can talk more about that in this bill.
Oh, no, and then just under that first line, that is tuition is flat from year over year. So that's something that the board needs to consider. That was my only highlight,
Yeah.
that and the 25%.
So then getting into the expense side, starting with line 28, so under the first section, I do highlight that this is the additional staffing of the second dean position. A reduction, I should have listed this above, but I didn't, a 0.5 academy aide, which is like a study hall monitor, if you will, that we have in the budget this year. That will get reduced as well. I should have included that on the top part. And then, so you see an increase in that, the variance there on line 29, because you're adding the dean, but you're taking away that as well. So there's a little bit of an offset there, but there's still an overall plus on that side. I'm going to come back to 31 later, I think, line 31. But as you go down through this, the really the one that's is going to jump out at you probably is line 53, which is technical and software line. And when Lori and I started looking at building the budget last year, we talked about how we restructured a lot of the lines because stuff was being targeted to lines that were all over the place, and there was not a lot of consistency in how that was done. So it was really hard to figure out like how much you actually spend on copier expense, because the copier expense was out in like 4 different places. So we tried to figure that out and clean it up when we built last year's, and I think we did clean up a bunch of stuff, but there's some stuff that we didn't pick up as we went along. Like, so this year we started fiscal year like, oh wait a minute, we didn't think about that. And we thought maybe it was included somewhere else, and as we've learned it wasn't, so we're trying to pick up all those pieces. And we really think it's a 2-year process to kind of figure all that out. But the technical software line is for anything that's software licensing that we need to do, which includes like the Chromebook licensing for the one-to-one. It includes the Power Dashboard that is a tool that teachers use. It includes our enriching student software, which is our the program we use to schedule our remediation block, our flex period. And then this year, a new expense for us, which we didn't anticipate and didn't have last year, are our local assessment devices. So Ames Web and Star 360, which is part of our common assessment plan that we have to have with the state. Those also, we have to subscribe to those, and they're online, and you pay per kid, and there's licensing, and setup fees and all that kind of stuff. So that number appears to be really up, but it's really more accurate, I think you would say. Although we did add those things to it as well for next year, so that we'd be properly budgeted to do those things. So that overall leaves us with a reduction in that one area, in part because of that line 31, which I'll come back to. Just hold that thought for now. All right. All right, moving into, so most of these are going to be fairly simple. Like in the art department, for example, nothing really changed. But this is where I want to highlight this, coming back to this line 31. You'll notice that in here, the salary and health insurance lines appear to be a 6.1 or around 6.1% increase, or a 10% increase. And I want to explain that because I want to make sure we're clear on why it's like 6%. You're thinking, like, did the teachers get a 6% raise? Like, what's going on? Well, as you know, there is a contract that you'll be voting on, I think today, right? Later on. Because these comparisons are made against FY17, what you're really looking at, that 6% is really the 2-year, because you're comparing it to the actual of 17. So you have FY18, which is not in it because it was located in a different place in the budget. We didn't build that into the salary lines. We built it in that line 31. Now, we're taking it out of line 31, which is why it shows a reduction up there. And we're putting it back into the salary lines where it belongs, because now we know what the settlement is potentially going to be based on ratification. But because we had to also take into account that this is a percent increase, it's a percent increase from actual FY17, we have to still build in 18 and then put 19 in. So that's a 2-year increase, which is why it looks like it's 6%, but it really isn't a 6% increase. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You guys all understand that? Okay. And health insurance, I guess, is really based on the projections by VHI. So that one, I think, is a 1-year increase, correct? So when you look at the bottom of each, like the art area, and you're going to see this in multiple places, you're going to find that with a 6% increase in salary in a lot of places and a 10% increase in benefits, when you're talking about level staffing, you're going to see at the bottom of that whole area, you're going to see numbers that are right around the same thing. In other words, the discretionary funds are either reduced or the same. So there's not a lot of increase. If there is, I can show you where it's taken off other places. So I want to highlight that piece, that you know that there's not a lot of wiggle room within the discretionary funds around how to fund these programs. You're going to have an art teacher and have X number of art classes with a full-time teacher. You need X number of art dollars for supplies. So it goes without saying, I think. All right, as we move on to the next page, career education. You may recall we discussed this in the spring when we had the resignation of our co-op teacher. We reorganized that position and created a multiple pathways coordinator, which is more suited to do a variety of the multiple pathways under Act 77. So that position is no longer under the career ed umbrella. It's actually under the counseling umbrella. So we're going to see an increase in counseling later, which I'll highlight. But just to see, this one it's basically taken out of this whole area. So it looks like we're not staffing it. We are, just it's in a different budget line because it's a broader thing than just career education. So it looks like a $56,000 reduction. It's really not, but we'll see later on where that gets put back in. All right, so as we go through English, you can see we had some savings, I think, based on new hires versus last year's budget. So that's where we're seeing some reductions there. Foreign language, we're seeing at the bottom that roughly that 6% number. Phys ed and health, we're seeing some reductions there in supplies, which helps bring that 6% number down. But basically with the same staffing, you're looking at the same dollar amounts. Consumer science, I believe there was some, it looks like there's a reduction, but there really isn't a reduction in the salary. I think there was an overcorrection when we tried to fix the FY18 budget based on what we thought the actual was. And so now it's been readjusted, so it looks like it's actually down, but it's the same FTE. Does that make sense?
Because you can see this $8,000.
Yep. Woodworking and tech ed. This one's another one that has a little bit of weirdness to it. So we had our technology teacher, who previously was a part-time technology teacher and part-time employee of Wyndham Central, is now going to be, if I understand correctly, a full-time employee of Wyndham Central but we will pay for the teaching part of that, and we will pay for the other part of that, which will now be our IT support, because we've going to involve a RIF of another existing IT person to make room for this person to come back. So there's an overall reduction in FTEs, but the way that it's being financed will be through WCSU. So in the woodworking and tech ed line, what we're really seeing is just woodworking, the FTE from woodworking. The tech ed will come in later. So it looks like there's a big reduction there, which there is, but it's just somewhere else. All right. Still with me, right? All right, math is going to be similar. Not a lot going on there. Pretty limited increase based on similar staffing. Music had a big savings for us because of hires. And again, some of those hires come through Wyndham Central, so line 152, because that person is part-time with us and part-time at Wardsboro. They're mostly with us. They still become a Wyndham Central employee, and we have to pay into the assessment for Wyndham Central for that position. The other position with us is local, and that's the one that's in the salary. There is a small increase in the music equipment line, 157, and that reflects the work of these two. One guy was hired last year, one guy was hired this summer. They've spent a ton of time going through all of the equipment that the music department has, looking at old instruments, trying to figure out what is usable, trying to discard old instruments and think about how we're going to replace some of those that need repair or replacement. So there's a slight increase in the, well, I'll say slight, it's a couple $1,000 increase in the music equipment line in order to be able to fund that work. So that's that. But overall, music's down because of the salary differential with the new employee. Science, similar kind of situation. Staffing is a little bit less expensive than it had been. And there's a slight increase. We created a new line in 169 for contracted services, and that's because we have a chemical closet that needs to get emptied. At least not emptied, but gone through with chemical removal in a safe way, because a lot of it can be hazardous material, so you have to bring in a special contractor to do that work. So we've estimated that at $2,500 based on previous schools I've worked in and what they usually have to pay for that. It could be much less depending on what they find. So probably won't be more. So science overall is down.
First year for that then?
It's the first year in a long time. For those of you that have been around, I was told the last person to do it was Calvin Farwell. It was probably 10 to 20 years ago that he did it. So, in fact, it may have been when they moved into the new science rooms 22 years ago. So that one that's currently in the room right behind where you guys are sitting has been the accumulation of the last 22 years of stuff. It's a good time to kind of, explore that. All right, social studies, again, is pretty much the same. In meeting, Lori met with Jesse Riemenschneider, Journey East director, to talk a little bit about our local contribution to that program, and we've made the determination to reduce that. Some of that, I think, you could make the argument that that's the difference between having a director on staff and paying a director to come and run it for us. So I think we're saving that money that we normally would have paid a director to run it. And that's the savings that we're passing on to the year. It's not exactly penny for penny, but ballpark.
Right, and we talked about
Yep.
every other year with the Mongolian trip, and then with the Mongolian visit versus the trip year, being able to go back and forth. So next, fiscal year 20 would be the 31,000 to keep the program the way it should be running itself.
But yeah, so social studies is basically the same, so it's going to look like it's down more than the 6% increase, which it is because of that reduction. Driver education, you mentioned that at the front, there's a reduction there, 0.25 FTE, which is what you're seeing, resulting in a almost $15,000 reduction. Special education, this is all pass-through stuff from Wyndham Central, as we've learned in the last couple of years how that works. Special ed does quite a lengthy process in exploring what they call developing a service plan, where they look at the students that will be here next year, so the current 6th through 11th graders, anticipate, and try to figure out what those students are gonna have for needs on their IEP. And then those needs are translated into a financial calculation to figure out what that cost is. And based on the considerations of that work that Stephanie did with Lori, we're looking at saving about $12,000 from the current fiscal year on that. So, and that has fluctuated as it's gone up, it's gone down, their guess based on how things have come played out with different scenarios and different kids. So this is the struggle of a small district, is that one kid can blow that out of the water for good or for bad. 2 or 3 kids can cause havoc. So that's what that is. And as we get into the co-curricular section, that includes the athletic director, activities director, and coaches, and all the affiliate stuff that goes along with that, for after-school stuff for theater. It also includes the bottom line, 215, is the contribution to the after-school program. That's our assessment based on, I guess it's an agreement we have with the 21C program, so that's what that line is. Counseling, so this is where things are a little bit different because of how we talked about before. So you'll notice that there is a significant increase in the work-based learning coordinator line 221. That's the money that we described coming in from the other side, from that career education line that we reduced, as well as a registrar is in that line as well. And this includes 2.0 FTE in the counseling salary line, which again is the proposed, the existing 1.25 plus an additional 0.75. And then the only other thing in here that's kind of, we took a bit of a jump on supplies down at the bottom, and that is under line 234, as we are going to require all 10th graders to take PSATs. And instead of having it optional to students, we're going to require it next year, and as such, I mean, ethically, I think we have to pay for that. So we built in an extra $900 to cover that. But we think it's going to pay out in dividends because there's good reporting that comes out of the College Board for kids who do take the PSATs. It raises the level of awareness around, I can actually go to college, and start thinking about us having a culture of that thinking. And gives the kids and the families some incredible data. And also qualifies kids for National Merit Scholars if they are able to do that. All right, the nursing line is pretty much exactly the same. That 6%, as we said, is connected to the salary. So professional development section. So this is the reduction of the 2 coaches to 1 coach. So there's a big reduction there. Now part of the, so the interesting thing about this is you'll notice that line 257 looks like it has a sizable increase, and it does. That is the offset. So think about it this way, if we're taking a 25% reduction in funding, and we reduced half of our coaches, that's half of our funding. So there should be something left over, right? That amount we estimate to be about $20,000, and that we can use for professional development. And so we want to add that into the pool we already have, professional development. And so the thinking is, the challenge to that is that money is then tied to one of the goals in our SIP. So you can't just use it for any kind of professional development. It has to be aligned to what we're doing, which we hope to be doing anyways, but it does have limits. So you have to be able to work with the grant to make sure that you can spend that money in certain ways. But that's sort of the remaining quarter of that, to where that's going. And then, so the teacher-directed line 258, that also has an increase, and that, as I understand, is tied to the potential ratification in the new collective bargaining agreement that you'll be looking at later. That is what our contribution would be based on the calculations of the business manager. All right, and then moving on to the next page, instructional technology. So this is the IT area. So this is where we talked about there was going to be a change, because remember, there's gonna be money that's gonna be coming out of the woodworking and design budget, and there was a reduction there. This is where you're gonna see that going back in. So it looks like there's a $35,000 increase, but if you line that up with what was in the negative on the woodworking one, you would see that, that would actually be where that's coming from. Library is pretty much the 6%. The next section is you guys, school board, legal expenses, property tax on Somerset property, and our Wyndham Central assessment. And you can see that that's a number that's based on right now on enrollment projections. We get assessed that based on our share of the total student population within the SU. So that number, if numbers change, fluctuate, that number can change later on, to the good or to the bad. But we like it where it is. It's going down. So that shows an overall reduction in that section. And the principal's office section, there's a significant reduction there because of that .75 Director of Student Services, which has been reduced. But keep in mind that there's an additional dean in this dean section, which doesn't use up all of that savings, but it does involve some of it. So just be aware of that. And that's the bulk of that one. Lori, I'm going to defer to you on line 320, business office short-term interest. 'Cause
Yes,
that's one I didn't know what to say about that. I didn't know what that was.
That's for the tax anticipation note that you take out every year. And we took out, I think, 1.3 or 1.4 this past year, so you'll be paying it back. There'll be just more interest on that. So that's why that is increased.
The rest of the business office expenses we took out of the budget last year, moved into the Wyndham Central, as when Carolyn left Leland and ended up going back down there. They took over more of those operations. So that's why the rest of those lines appear to be blank. And then the building section has the no change in staffing on that one. There's a few tweaks here and there based on estimates of insurance increases, electricity decreases, and one increase on line 350 for equipment because we have a floor cleaning machine that is past its useful life and is slowly dying. So
But there's no capital.
there is no capital. The line 337 is these what I used to call my former district the annual projects. These are smaller projects that we do that just have to get done over the course of a year, replacing a bathroom stall, door locks, maybe a little bit of lighting or treads on the stairs that come loose. Just those kinds of year-to-year mini projects that come up. A lot of that money will end up probably rolling into the heating work that we're already starting. Because of the radon expense this past fiscal year being higher than what we had budgeted, I think we may have used some of the capital fund money to do some of that work, and therefore what we thought we'd be having in the capital fund to fund the heating retrofit with sort of the phase one of the heating work was less than we thought, so we ended up overspending on that part. So it'll all kind of come out in the wash, but so there's money that we need to do those sorts of regular things. So that one is up 9,000 overall, 1.6%. And then transportation, again, this is estimates based, this is numbers based on our contract with the bus company for transportation to school. Field trip is the next one, which is significantly smaller. And then there's food services, and then our interest on bonds and principal payments on the bond, which again bring us to the bottom line of the overall reduction of 2.3% or 145. And then I mentioned that of course has to take into account the $50,000 deficit, which would go against that as well. And that, my friends, is the first draft.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Can you go over line item 225, please? I just don't know what that is. That covers.
Counseling municipal retirement?
Oh, okay, thank you. I
Yes.
wasn't sure what the RET stood for.
Yes, there's a couple of employees in that department that are not teacher retirements, but are rather municipal employees.
Anybody else? Questions, comments on the board? Nothing?
Still absorbing.
Still absorbing? I guess I'll open it up to the public. Questions? I think that was a great explanation. Thank you, Bob. You know, it was very detailed. I know, I understand the process pretty well after that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Marshall Glickman from Williamsville. Not to undermine Bob's work, which obviously he did a lot, but I'm kind of blown away here. I mean, I been at a couple meetings, seen some minutes, and I don't see any direction whatsoever from the board. It seems like you guys have totally abdicated any sort of input into giving Bob direction. It seems like we've done the exact opposite of what should be happening. I mean, right now, it's kind of like Bob's high school as opposed to the community's high school that's directing what Bob should be doing. So, for instance, he just went through an extensive but bloodless conversation about numbers. There was nothing about the values that were reflected here. So, for instance, an obvious one is the school social worker, which is being reduced. It's something like, I don't have the numbers, but maybe 0.5%, but that's a significant change in school culture, and that didn't get a peep of any kind of conversation. And also, from my understanding of being a business person, being on boards, the emotional piece in the success of students and people long after school is their emotional resiliency. I have a very active business with a lot of people, and more than anything, it's not intelligence, it's people's ability to get along with others, to stay on task, to be resilient, to be independent. And so these are a crucial function, and for that to be represented in the school, to be eliminated without any conversation, any direction from the board, any vision from the board, I just find that really upsetting. So I guess that's what I want to say. Which isn't to say anything against Bob. I'm not. You're filling a void, but the void is what's disturbing.
Kim Friedman from South Newfane, and thank you for your work on the board. I know it takes a lot of time and energy. As many of you know, I'm the parent of 2 Leland and Gray graduates. I love this school, and I think it's really, really important that the West River Valley has a high school. So that's my starting point. I'd like to share 3 points with the administration as well as with the board. The first is from the perspective of a former board chair, and I'm not saying what I'm about to say to toot my own horn. I was part of a large group of board members from Newfane and Brookline who undertook a year-long process to reimagine what Newfane and Brookline schools could look like. And that process included a lot of public input, 5 different scenarios, each of which had its own budget implications. And through that year-long process, we were able to come up with a new vision for Newbrook. And I also, so from my perspective as the school board chair and having gone through that process, the only way that I know to build a responsible budget is to have a really clear vision, core guiding principles, clear core values, and then from there build a budget based on, that scaffolding. And I'm really concerned because this budget feels like business as usual when we have been told for the last 2 years by the school board that we're inching towards having a school that's not viable. And I don't see anything in here that is built on a vision of a reimagined Leland and Gray. Which gets me to my second point, which is there was talk a year ago about starting a visioning process, and I don't know where that stands. I haven't heard anything about that tonight. I haven't seen anything in school board minutes from the last few months about that. So I echo what Marshall said. It feels like there's a conceptual and a visionary void. And I don't think that that moves us closer to a sustainable Leland and Gray. I think it moves us closer to an unsustainable Leland and Gray, which is an incredibly distressing and actually heartbreaking thought for me, because the school has become the fabric of our West River Valley community. We don't have Granges. We have Brookline lost its elementary school. All of you have experienced the ways in which community, the fabric of our community, is chipped away at. And I'm concerned that that's the direction that Leland and Gray is going in. And I have some thoughts about a reimagined Leland and Gray, but I won't take time right now to share them unless the school board would like to hear them. My second point is that I am concerned from communications that came out prior to tonight, and Bob, from your presentation, that it feels like something is, that the budget's a fait accompli. And I know that the budget documents as proposed in draft, the memo that accompanies it does not, and you spoke in the future tense, not the conditional tense. And from what I understand from some of the communications that have come out, it feels like a process that involves an interaction with a dialogue with the public and building the budget has been skipped over. And again, as a former school board chair and as a member of this community, there's something that feels inherently undemocratic about that, and that goes against the grain of tradition in Vermont. And that really concerns me. And then my last point is that, Joe, you referenced Secretary Holcomb's memo from August 4th about staff attrition, and there has been a lot of, and I've read the memo, I've read Vermont Digger articles, there's been a lot of interpretation of that as a mandate to cut school funding. I didn't read it like that, and I'm very familiar with school budgets and related documents. And in fact, I'm quoting, she implores boards as custodians of public dollars to do all that they can to make sure we're making the best possible use of public dollars to ensure equitable access to high quality education for our children. Number one, I don't take that as a mandate to cut. And number two, it raises some real questions to me about some of the judgment calls that are reflected in the proposed budget, particularly around the ability of the school staff to support children's or students' mental health needs. And then lastly, and then I'll stop, is she also refers to micro schools and micro systems. I don't think that Leland and Gray is at the point that it's a micro school, and given the recent creation of a K-12 board, I definitely don't think that we count as a micro system. In fact, I think it goes in the opposite direction. So while I realize that the student census is decreasing, I still think that we need to be thinking about how we sustain some kind of middle and high school that serves the West River Valley. And then lastly, she talks about the low student-teacher ratios, and I just caution you to be really careful about student class sizes getting too big, because we know from research in this country and in this state that the high quality of Vermont's education is due largely to small class sizes and low student teacher ratios. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share those thoughts.
My name's Amanda DeBishop. I'm a Townsend resident and a high school English teacher here.
You're going to have to speak up.
And I'll try to speak up. You know, it's hard to use my classroom voice all day. I apologize, but there it is if you want it. So I'm really concerned about the proposed reduction of the 0.6 social worker and the increase to 2 counselors at Leland and Gray. My job as a classroom teacher would be literally impossible without a clinical mental health professional in this building. My teaching approach and my teaching philosophy is socio-emotional. It's based on building relationships with students, but knowing that, I also have to recognize that I'm not a mental health professional. I can't pass certain boundaries in situations with students, and in order to deal with the disclosures that students will make to me when I form close relationships with them, I need to rely on a really close collaboration with a mental health professional who's in-house, in the building, and accessible. This is really important for me as a classroom teacher with just the general population that I deal with. But I'm also the advisor of the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance. This is a support organization and an action platform for students who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or affiliated with the queer community. And these students statistically are really high among rates of suicidal ideation and suicide, among homelessness, among being harassed at school verbally or physically. And so the number of disclosures that I encounter in my school life may be slightly higher than other teachers who aren't facilitating groups like this, and without a mental health professional in the building who I can count on to act swiftly and react appropriately, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't be able, without that mental health training, to provide that kind of support for students without the support that I get from a school social worker. And counselors are great, they're fantastic, but they don't have the same clinical mental health training that's necessary in order to provide that kind of support. So I guess that's my piece.
Linda?
Yes, I would really like to echo this very strongly on both ways. I've been a school social worker for over 40 years. I've maintained my LICSW license in Vermont, even though I'm 81, because it enhances my work as a guardian ad litem. And I can't bear to see this reduction in this school. And I hear over and over the mental health needs. You put it very clearly and very well, working with professionals. It's essential to have your own social worker in the building. The social worker knows the culture of the building, knows the teachers, knows the classroom expectations. To contract to HCRS or to health and rehabilitation services doesn't really work. I've been working with it up at Bellows Falls. You really need to have your own. I was at an IEP meeting. I'm an educational surrogate for a child down in Brattleboro Union High School. Several months ago, they did hire their own social worker, and everybody was so pleased that this person actually knew the culture of the building and could assist the students in getting over the difficulties that they were experiencing. They're not earth-shaking difficulties in many cases, they become that. But if a social worker knows the resources and the processes of a school and can utilize those resources and bring them to bear on a child. And my last point, which I've got a lot in between, but I'm jumping to the last one quickly. Social work is cost effective. I hate to say this, but actually I don't hate to say this, it's very true. We do a tremendous amount of preventive work in the schools. And 80% of my caseload in my school, I just retired in 2012, not that long ago, was mainstream kids. And by sensing their difficulties and their hang-ups, we could evaluate the processes going on in the school and prevent the process into special education. I saw that over and over. And that's a very cost, 0.6. It's nothing when you look at what's the cost that's being prevented. Also, social workers work very collaboratively. We're trained in teamwork with other health professionals. We bring all of our expertises from different areas to bear, just as this teacher said so movingly. And we're a great link to the community on boards and home visits. When I was working, I was on the board here from 1213 to 1216. They're trying to put pressure on me to come back, because there's no Brookline. I didn't say my name. I'm Lyndall Bowl from Brookline. I really was so excited, exercised about the social worker. But so now we have no Brookline representative, which I feel bad for. But when I was on the board was so focused in many ways on the emotional health, the dental clinic, the food, that horrible word food insecurity that kept haunting our families. this school is known for that, and I even think you got a big award last spring or something for the whole child. You got a humongous award for doing just what I'm talking about. The social worker also provides a very safe base for students. I used to have kids coming in just off the bus to park with me, whatever difficulties and concerns had happened the night before, and then they skipped off to class. Because they knew someone had it, some trusted person had received what they were worrying about. They could put it into words and reduce it and go on. Also, social workers really, they mobilize resources to enhance self-worth and confidence. I want to tell you one little vignette, and then I'll sit down. I had a boy that was failing classes, a very bright boy, and his parents were so disappointed and shamed, the worst emotions a kid can get from parents. Not anger, but this sinking feeling that you're no good. The kid and I, we sat down and we talked and we got to know each other. He was very proud and very talented in respect to a rock band that he had formed. This was really not known, even to the music department, which was more classical. So we investigated this further, and we started up rock band concerts. We had 12 bands in the end, held in the school auditorium, and this boy became the manager. He knew his stuff. His grades went up, his parents were proud, and he had really done something, and he knew it. And that's the sort of relationship and the kind of connections that I think social workers can make in school. So I was very glad to hear about this and your kids. So that's why I'm here. Please don't take this resource away from our kids that need it so badly. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret Wimberger. I have 2 daughters who went to this school, and I used to be on the board. And I currently work as a guardian ad litem along with Lyndall and deal with kids all over this county of all ages. And everyone just said it so well, but I really want to ask the board if what you want is a school with a lot of administration and no school social worker in this time, which is profoundly stressful and difficult for all of us, and especially for our kids. And our communities are fraying, and this is community. And the work that a school social worker does, I feel like I said this at the last meeting I came to, it has to do with relationships with each other and with oneself. And kids these days are being neglected at home. Their attention is really, really challenged by technology. They're living in a reality that we did not know, where they regularly hear about other school kids committing suicide, talking about committing suicide, shootings in schools, famous people all over the news who disrespect women in enormous ways, and boys, high school, middle school boys need to understand how to deal with themselves and that. And I think a lot of the work in this school is done with groups of boys, and I think to neglect that is so short-sighted and just uncaring, really. It's so much more important than another half a counselor and another dean for a reduced student population.
Dan DeWalt, Newfane. I'm a part-time teacher here, and I have 2 girls graduate from here. And as I'm looking at the salaries and our costs of our educators, I see a salary, and then I see a number underneath it, maybe 30%, maybe 35% of the salary, which is healthcare. So I'm thinking, that's funny, because the job of a school isn't to provide healthcare. The job of the school is to teach. We have to provide health care because that's the way the system is. So everybody understands that. We pay for health care. The school shouldn't be a mental health clinic either. But it has to be, because kids come to this school every day in crisis, with addicted parents, couch surfing, any myriad of problems, issues, and this goes from the gamut from the kids in the most distressed circumstances to kids in pretty good circumstances. These are daily occurrences that we have to deal with, and if we cannot get a child to the point where he is ready to learn for that day, it doesn't matter if the counselor is going to give him some great advice on how to get that SAT test going, or the PSAT, or whatever it might be. It's not going to do him any good to go into a class where we've got an instructional course with a great Google Classroom and a bunch of really exciting things to do if that kid has not settled down from whatever trauma it was that he was living in until the point he got onto the bus in the morning. These are realities, and you cannot pretend that they're not there. You want me to wait? Okay. So, if you, it's like the building. Year after year, well, only 2 years, but this is as long as he's been here, Bob says, the building, we've got to do some work on the building. And like Ryan's like, yeah, okay. But we're not going to put any money into the building because why? I don't have any idea why. These are things which are irrational. They don't make sense. We have to invest in our building. We have to do it at some point, unless we're okay with the building crumbling down, which we're supposed to not to be okay with. So we have to invest in the building at some point. We have to invest in the mental health of our children and our students. Or else what we'll be doing is putting a gilded roof on a crumbling institution. We can't do that. And we can't, even if we get it so 90% of our students are cranking, we can't, where 99% of our students are cranking. We are not permitted to allow 1% or whatever that small number of a cohort of people who are in absolute need of professional mental health to be left dangling, because not only is it their school career which is affected, it's their entire lifetimes which are affected. It is our valley which is affected. It is our community. It is our future. So, you know, under Peter Shumlin, Secretary Holcomb had some messages about economy. Under Governor Scott, she's got a slightly different tailored message. You know, she's a political animal. She has no real choice about that. We have shown you time and time again, we're not lovers of high taxes in this area. We are lovers of this school, and we're willing to support this school. We recognize there's some things which have to, just like healthcare, dental care, there are things we have to live with. Mental health care is one of those things. We do not have the option of pretending that it's not part of our problem. Oh, one other thing. I did send you guys, and I would like to congratulate Bob. I agree. I've not gotten any sense of vision from the board. I think Bob Thibault is working pretty hard to try to get the staff to think about it. He's had some workshops to varying degrees of success. So the school is actually, I think he's doing it. He's trying to come up with a vision, and it's not a thing which happens immediately. I did send a correspondence to you folks, which I was hoping to get a response from at some point. So if you did not get one, which I wrote about a vision of the school, of Leland and Gray as a caring place, is a really beautiful place that already has a reputation for that, which can serve us well in attracting more students. But if you didn't get that, I'm not sure I had everyone's email, and I would be happy to, if I can figure out how to get everyone's email, make sure that everyone gets that.
Yeah. Actually, I think we might. I think probably all of us, with the exception of maybe Abby, got that. I didn't get it. Oh, that's right. You don't have a Windows Central. But you know, the board can't actually respond to that until we actually meet and discuss it. So you wouldn't have gotten any private emails back. Anyway. Can I, yeah, I was just going to ask you guys, you know, I just want to, you know, get a response from you guys. I mean, obviously you've made these plans, and I think you can speak to this. You know, we're being called even uncaring as a board here, and I know that I personally care deeply about the children. And I don't think that anything that any of these changes that you've made should really be characterized that way. And I'm sure that you have a plan in place to deal with the needs of the children, and that we are dealing with the needs of the children. And I see hands all over that want to respond to this. Since I asked Bob to respond, can I let Bob speak first, and then we'll get you two in?
Yeah, I guess a couple things that struck me from, a lot of passionate speakers and some folks who have some great experiences and a wide variety of backgrounds. I want to say, just literally on the record, since I'm on the record, I didn't come here to let Leland and Greg close. So I left a job that I had stability in a school that was not under any risk of closure to come here, because I, like many of you, believe in this place. My kids went here and go here. I gave 10 years of my professional career as a teacher here, as a coach, as an advisor. I used to say that I would bleed green and white, and I'm committed to making sure this place stays open for the Valley. So just, I want to put that up there to start with. That's my plan, all right? And I feel very passionately about that plan. As Dan mentioned, the school has been working a lot on vision and has been working a lot on how we reinvent ourselves. Dan's email that he is referring to is actually in response to an email I put out to the staff, asking the staff to think about something big. We did this whole project with a design thinking consultant who came in and worked with us around how to go about solving a problem using design thinking, which is an incredible process. And we came up with a bunch of different projects or ideas of ways to improve Leland and Gray. And what I said to the staff was they were all very interesting ideas. They were all very good ideas. The problem was they only addressed incremental change. And what I was looking for is exactly what you guys are describing, is something transformational. I don't think we thought big enough. So I just want you guys to know that's something we're working on still to this day. We have time allotted to talk about what our vision is. I was just talking to Amanda about this earlier today. We have to align some things and make sure that we're all on the same page about certain core beliefs, I think someone mentioned. But that's something that we are working on, and it is a slow process. And you have to get a community of just staff on one page. That is incredibly difficult, never mind the whole outside community. So that's something we are working on. The other thing I think that I want to mention, I think, and this might be the cause of some confusion for folks, and I don't know. I don't know that folks fully understand what a school counselor does. I think that there's this impression that they just do college stuff. And so the idea that we're going to increase the school counseling staff and actually create a larger number of FTEs in the counseling department than exists now, to me speaks the opposite of what you guys are describing, in that what we're going to provide supports for kids. My impression in thinking about how this reorganization works, the only service that was mentioned out of all the things you guys talked about that a school counselor can't do is the therapeutic work, the deep therapeutic counseling. Everything else that was mentioned, home visits, connecting kids with services, being the person that the kid dumps on in the morning before they go to class. These are all things that a school counselor can do and should do on a regular basis. They can have groups, they can do individual work, they can do this on an ongoing basis. And I think that's something, I think Mel tried to explain this last spring a little bit. And so for me, the way I'm approaching this isn't to get rid of a school social worker because I don't believe that we need to provide mental health support. The opposite, in fact, I'm trying to expand what we can do to provide support for kids by going from 1.85 counselors total to 2.0. And doing so in a way that brings my budget down simultaneously while providing these guys with everything they need, not only for the college stuff that they have to do and the scheduling and all the other stuff that a school counselor does, but also provide that support that a school counselor can do. Mental health support, not therapy, but mental health support. And for me, I just want to make sure people understand. I think Dan referenced the counselor doing like PSAT stuff. That's the tip of the iceberg for a school counselor. It's way broader than that. Those two jobs have a huge amount of what's the word you're looking for? Overlap as far as what they can do. And there's some things that a school counselor can do that a social worker cannot, and there's some things that a social worker can do that a school counselor cannot. But there's a huge overlap, and my intention is actually to provide more service with 2 full-time people who are here every day to provide that level of support. Not interested in taking away support at all. I think we need to build on that, and that's why that increase is actually an overall increase. So I just want to put that out there. It's just a different way of looking at it. It's a reorganization, that's all.
I got Abby and Drew first.
I've been in education for 43 years, and I've been an educator for 43 years. 33 of those years has been in this community. 8 of these years has been spending a lot of time at Leland and Gray. And I have to say that Bob has put a lot of work and effort into transforming this school into a really learning environment for all children. 60% of your kids last year, I don't know if it's decreased, were on some kind of educational support plan, be it EST, be it 504, be it IEP. You may say that's a really good reason why you need a social worker. That's unprecedented. There's no other high school that has that kind of high percentage of kids that need that kind of intervention, because all kids want to learn, no matter what. And I've seen it all too. I've seen it all in special ed. I've seen it in regular ed, what these kids are struggling with. But when they can come to school and learn if everyone in the school knows they can. And I think what Bob is trying to do in his vision is to have that happen with all kids. So we decrease our special ed kids, our 504 kids. I mean, our highest, when I was, this last year, when I was the director, our highest referrals came from Leland and Gray. Now, these weren't kids that came in from our schools from other states. These were kids that came from Newbrook, that came from Brookline, that came from Townsend. So he's got a big job to do. How am I going to get everything all these kids need and have them make sure that my teachers are skilled, that they know how to work with all children, and that they get the emotional support they need, teachers need, and the training, which I think Bob is, and also I've got to say Bill too, the vision of this school district is to have everyone feel that all kids can learn. Because I can tell you, and I'm not just talking, please, this isn't just Leland and Gray, but there's a stigma when you have when you're in, I have an IEP, or if you have a 504 EST, and there's a part of you as a child that don't think you can learn. And if you have a principal like Bob who says every student can learn, we just have to reinvent ourselves and do more transformation of how we do instruction. Now, I wasn't going to say anything at my first meeting. I really thought I should just sit and listen to what everybody's saying, but I can tell you these teachers and this principal are really working hard to make that happen. And I have every faith and confidence with the leadership, and like Bob said, he was principal of the year at Springfield. He didn't have to come to this school. He had not a cake job, but he had a pretty good job. He took on an incredible challenge that I don't think a lot of you people know he did. I really don't. And I hear what Bob is saying, and he's got all these students that he's got to meet their needs, but I think he's on the right path, and this is a hard decision in these times with Act 46, and how do we meet the needs? Because everybody wants to see Leland and Gray stay open. I have become incredibly fond of this school. The kids are incredible. Teachers are hardworking, and we just have to, we've got a lot of work. He's got a lot of work to do. I think he's doing a very good job of trying to do that.
So I want to reply to the comments about lack of vision. I've sat in this particular chair and for a couple meetings now and had members of the public come in and say that the board is lacking vision. And I'd like to remind you all, because I was here every 2 weeks for the last 2 years studying our educational system. Many of you weren't, but most of us were. We have been working on vision. In fact, the vision that we look at is no longer Leland and Gray. The vision that we're looking at is pre-K-12. The vision that this board is looking at is all of our kids in all of these schools. In fact, we were all here last night having a work session from a lot of us on vision for education in the district. So you may not see it in the minutes, maybe you're not looking in the right places, but this board and a lot of us have done meetings 2, 3, 4 times a week on visioning as to what education is for our district. We have given direction to our administration. They are our educational leaders. We have asked them to come up with plans for us because I'm not an educator. But we do have a vision for what we want to do in this district. We've decided we want to make this transformation. We've decided that we want to keep our schools open. But we've also decided that we need to look at this from a cost-effective education system that we can all support. And we got to do this pre-K through 12. Why is it that we're not making drastic changes at Leland and Gray this year? We have a bigger district to talk about. Does it make perfect sense for us to make huge decisions in a vacuum this year when a year from now this merged district is taking over? Or does it make sense for us to have one vision as a new district? Pre-K through 12. That's what we're working on.
So what is the vision?
What is our vision? We've been working on this vision.
I know, can you articulate it and communicate it to the community and to Bob?
We're in the process. You've been invited to these meetings. We're developing a new district. We're developing a school district right now.
So you're saying you don't have something that you transmitted to give direction to Bob?
I'm saying we absolutely did. And
What,
if
then articulate it, please.
we have asked Bob, as our educational leader, to create a program for the kids in this school, for the students that come to Leland and Gray. We've asked Bill to help us design a new education system, K-12. Are you asking, have we told them which teachers to keep? No, that's not our job.
True. I'm sorry, that's not a vision. That's advocating a vision. You're saying we've looked to him for our educational leader instead of saying, this is what we value, and can you please translate that into the budget? Just saying we're for K through 12 and we trust him. I'm not saying I don't trust Bob. I'm just saying the direction needs to come from you guys.
The direction is coming from us.
Then why can't you
The
articulate it?
criticism's
What's the
coming from
direction?
across the table, where you guys are coming in to one meeting, and I can tell you were here last night during our visioning session.
I'm asking you to explain it.
We're in a
Asking you to
process.
explain what it is.
These are there are two separate things as well, too. I mean,
There
this is
are.
the Leland and Gray Board. The visioning that's going on now is at a larger level. It's a West River MUUSD, the West River Education District. That process has just begun. There is no clear articulatable vision at this point. We had our first 3-hour session last night. We've been meeting since March when we organized, and we've never had a member of the public, except for one, show up at our meetings to talk about vision and how that's going to look and everything. And actually, we've been begging for public to come and give us input since April on this, and we've had very little until we put a document out and had somebody show up now. So, I mean, we're looking for input from the community. We did give specific direction to do something fiscally responsible. Last year, we blew the spending cap out of the water. We asked Bob to come to us with a budget that was fiscally responsible, something we could take to the taxpayers and expect to be passed, that did the best job of educating our kids that it possibly could, doing the right thing for all of our children, and keeping it fiscally responsible.
So what in other words, what you're transmitting is the fiscal part matters most, because there's no
The
other.
fiscal part matters quite a bit.
But
And
there was nothing else that included some kind of values and direction except
We
to keep it
have
under budget.
existing strategic plans, existing vision statements, existing ongoing mission statements. Those all were in front of both the board and Bob through this whole process. There isn't a new vision. If you'd like, I can get you our current. I'll get you those documents.
I would hope you would know it. I mean, you can send me the document, but I would hope you would know it so we can talk about it and look at the budget in the context of that hard-won, thoughtful concepts. I mean, it's kind of like saying, a business has a mission statement or concept of what they're about. Hopefully, everyone in the organization knows that immediately because it's so important to keep your focus.
Right. Bob? And Joe, to defend the board a little bit, you guys had, before I was even here, there was a work that was done 2020 document or something that you guys did a lot of work, how many years ago?
It's been a whole day.
I mean,
Vision.
on thinking about what are those core values, maybe that hasn't been
ago.
revisited?
No, we
Maybe.
distributed it before this.
Right, so it might be something that we could share out.
It's on,
It's on the.
it's posted.
It's on the-
Yeah.
Okay, so it might be on the website or in the notes or in the board section, is that where you?
The problem that we have for it now is sort of demonstrating the lack of like intimate knowledge and direction that it's giving, that it's just kind of like, we have one, we're gonna look for one, we have one, you can talk about it, but there hasn't been anything that's been transmitted, imparted, and thought through, and except for the fact to be, try to keep the budget down, which is of course important, but hopefully that's a subsector or subsumed, so he has direction about how to make those cuts.
I was like, do we have one down here?
Yeah, but you can let everybody else know.
No.
It's fine.
The board gets to actually speak first, so.
No, that's fine, they can go first.
Yeah. I have no idea whose hands up first, we'll just go to the front.
I just wanted to apologize for the uncaring comment. It came out in a way that I didn't mean it. I think what I was trying to say is that when you set your priorities, that has effects and consequences that have the effect of not caring well for the children. I know that all of you care, and I know that you sacrifice so much, and I know that you work very hard, and nobody's idea of fun is to work on a budget. So I really do apologize for that. But I really believe that caring for our children looks like something different from this budget. That's all I meant to say.
Barbara, Dan.
One of the things that occurred to me when we were talking is we're talking about a K-12 system.
That's not a Leland and Gray issue. That has nothing,
Well, hold
that's a
on.
future thing.
No, okay, it's coming in the future, but the only thing that we have in this building that starts at the elementary level and goes all the way through is the school social worker. And there's some huge value to that. I'll admit Susan is a friend of mine. I care a lot about the work that she does, but it isn't about my friendship with her. It's about the work that she does with kids. And again, the work she does in the elementary level pays off at this level. And I'm asking for you to consider to putting that 0.5 or 0.6 or whatever it is back into the budget and ask the voters to support it. Thank you.
I was at one of those big board meetings, and there was some sort of I don't know if it was called a vision statement or whatever it was for the board. And one of the things it mentioned was the board is absolutely interested in maintaining the mental health of our kids. And I would take Bob's point completely that there's a very small intersection where a school social worker and a counselor don't overlap. And that's precisely the little intersection that I'm advocating for. We can't afford to not have that piece. So I don't know how it would work if the other counselor could be a 0.5 or how you would do the numbers. But even if everything else stays the same, because we want to support our students in all levels, and I think Bob is trying to do that, and I give him credit for that. But I would agree with Barbara. It's like, just whatever this 0.6 is, just put that back in to realize and to fulfill your own stated goals of mental health, and to give that little missing piece that even Bob has admitted that's the one little thing that's not there. Let's just not let that happen, because those are those ones which will fall through the cracks, and those are the ones who have that need. And if they can't get that need here, we didn't even mention this. It's not like they go across the street. They have to go to Brattleboro. They have to make reference calls. They have to find somebody who'll take them, and it might be 6 weeks away. It's such a drastic difference between what you can get. And we're talking about a small number of people, and we're talking about an expense. But our children are worth paying for, and our state is worth supporting, and our school is worth supporting. We just have to do that.
I'd just like to touch on 3 points. One is, Bob, I am clear on the difference between a school social worker and a school counselor. I consulted professional organizations' definitions online. I consulted with 2 colleagues in the field because I wanted to be educated on the difference. And I want to reiterate what Dan said. I think it's really important not to minimize the value of the therapeutic component of the position. Drew, to your point, as you well know, because we served on the Wyndham Central Supervisory Board together for a number of years, I sat through, I think, 4 years of discussions of REDS and MUDs and you name the acronyms. And to me, having a pre-K to 12 board is not the same as having a vision for Leland and Gray. So I don't equate the two. And I'm having trouble translating what you're saying and the work of creating the pre-K-12 board, which sorry, Emily and Joe, it feels really insulting and disrespectful to me if you're
We're
talking.
hearing everything you said, Kim. We're just pulling up the vision so we can send it to all of you for release.
The vision for,
Leland and Gray.
okay. Which leads me to my third point, which is we could have, I think there's a disconnect between your clarity on your vision and what's getting communicated to the public. And I fully understand. I have not been at all those meetings. And I'm not in a position to come to all those meetings, and I'm grateful for all the time you put in. I do think that this conversation speaks to the need for the school board and the administration to more clearly articulate to the public what the vision is that's driving the budget and the vision that is, I hear, that is developing for Leland and Gray. And I'm hungry for that, and I'm thrilled to hear that there is one. I haven't seen anything. I've looked for it, I haven't found it. I've looked through minutes. So thank you for sending it. And I hope that in the subsequent meetings between now and the time that the budget is adopted, that when I come back in November and come back in December, there will be a clear link for me, conceptually and concretely, between that vision and the budget.
Linda?
Yes, I totally commend you for the caring and what's going on. I haven't been on the board while you've been here, but I can hear it, and I hear it. But it is that small piece, I'm coming back to that. I heard it so clearly from the classroom teacher.
Can you speak up? I can't hear you at all.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank
Well, I
you.
was commending Bob first off, the work that he's doing. But then I was saying it is that small piece, and Kim has elucidated that point too. It's that small piece that the classroom teacher needs when she talks about boundaries, about suicidal ideation, cutting, clinical symptoms that need to be addressed colleague to colleague, colleagues that know the school, know the parameters, and know the resources that are here. And you have to combine those two. 0.6 is small compared with the value, the return. But I hear you. And there's a lot that counselors and social workers overlap and that they should coordinate on. You're right, the stopping in the morning with the bad news. But this one piece needs to be here. Thank you.
I think we pretty much have it. And, unless we want to discuss and make some changes, I mean, I have some ideas about, tying some of these decisions into the vision more, but, yeah.
Can I just speak to that vision that you pulled up there?
Sure.
Because about I don't know how many years ago it was, we met as a board, spent a whole day on a retreat with Durin, and used our mission, which is at the top of our webpage, as it always is, and developed a broad vision that our intention was always to narrow down. We've operated under this, it's way too broad, and I can't remember the timeline of all of the work on this. We have asked several times to try to pull the board together to narrow that vision down, but we still use that document, which is pretty wordy and lengthy, but we still use that document. We still use the mission of Leland and Gray. But we are in an incredibly challenging time right now in that I think you said, this is only our third meeting that we've had in 6 months where we've had a quorum or something, or second meeting we've only had 2. It's been very challenging to get people to serve on this board because this board is not going to be in existence any longer. As we've been moving forward on merged board level, just say the West River board, everything you're saying is critically important, and that's exactly what we've been doing. So last night, we began the process of building a vision and planning for success. And I have great concerns about us first of all, we can't get quorums. We literally haven't been able to get quorums. And putting time and effort into something that's going to be changed very, very quickly, within a year, less. This is our last budget that this board will be developing. So I think it was pretty clear to us, especially when we couldn't get quorums, that we were not going to take that vision that goes on for several pages and narrow it down and develop it more because it's all happening at another level. So I feel like we've given the direction that we have with our vision document and our mission and our direction to the administration as we've been working forward. We need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of kids. I'll just quickly read the mission. The mission of Leland and Gray is to engage its students in an education that promotes excellence, fosters community, and respects individuality. And we've never lost that mission, and I would assume that, we'll end up revisiting that at some point here coming down the road, but we're in a really big transition. And I take everything that you're saying very seriously about the vision and mission. I think there's nothing that's more important to me than to do that, to engage community in that. It is probably the biggest challenge we've ever had to deal with, trying to engage community. People don't come, and we still have, Lyndall mentioned it, since you left Lyndall, which was 2 years now, we still haven't had anybody serve from Brookline. So we have a whole town not represented on this board. So those are real big challenges to overcome. So at this point in time, I think that we're doing the darn best we can to make sure the needs of our students are met. That's first. That's always first and foremost. And we have great plans, I think, for where we're going. The goal, and you've heard me say it before, has always been to keep Leland Gray not just open, but strong, viable, vibrant, and we need to reinvent ourselves. And it isn't going to be this board that's going to reinvent us. We just don't have the time. It's just that simple.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Gerald.
I'm Gerald Julian Cisse, New Canaan resident and also a Spanish teacher here at the school. And I guess, yes, this is not easy work and a lot of emotions come up. I guess where I just want to reiterate what Dan was saying about putting this 0.6 back into the budget. I actually wish it could be 1 point full-time. The SU, the Supervisory Union's continuous improvement plan that was put out last spring, specifically mentions having a social worker in the schools. And then the Leland and Gray talks about the social and emotional well-being of our students. So keeping that as a focus and a goal, I would also like to ask that the 0.6 position be put back in. It's not an exorbitant amount of money that the voters would turn down a budget, especially if they knew what it was concerning. I believe it's 0.6 because the counselor also serves part of the time at the elementary schools, and again, developing, as you are talking now, the K through 12, developing those relationships and those bonds in the elementary schools, bringing that same sense of security into the high school, and a person that's on staff here, accessible or within reach for that 0.4% of the time when that person is at the elementary schools. that is accessible immediately when we have a crisis, and we don't want to wait for an appointment a couple weeks from now or a couple days from now. There needs to be that ability, and so I guess I would like to refer back to the continuous improvement plan for both the SU and Leland and Gray, and ask you to please put that amount back into the budget, and then we'll discuss it when it can, I guess, when the voting actually happens. So thank you.
Oh, okay. You look so disdainful that it's difficult to respond.
No, I'm trying to find the continuous improvement plan,
Okay.
because I don't bring my bonds of
Okay,
documents here.
all right. I wanted to remind the board that the position of school social worker was only created at Leland and Gray 7 or 6 or 8 years ago, something like that. And it was created out of what seemed like a need, and it seemed so valuable that at that time the principal helped imagine that the school social worker could interact with kids at an earlier level and go out to some of the other schools, which is kind of something that I imagine the K through 12 board might understand as well. Once you create something, and you take it away, it's really hard to get it back. And I hesitate. I hope the board would hesitate to get rid of what it so carefully and thoughtfully and wisely created.
Sure.
Appreciate that. So there's so many comments to answer back to everybody else, but there's not a lot of time, so I'm just gonna say to the meat and potatoes of it. I fully agree with the teachers and the consent of the crowd here. I have personally seen the benefit that Susan implements throughout the entire district, from the elementary school level all the way up to the high school level. I feel that her position is a very integral part of the staff here. I feel it would be a great loss if she was not here. I do understand that we're
Caroline,
moving people
We
around.
can't make this about a certain person. This is about a broader thing.
Okay. Well, they brought up the name,
It's a
so
position.
I was
It's not-
going
it's not-
into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can't do that,
Okay,
please.
so anyway,
It's a
I'm
position.
trying to express that I feel that the mental health of this community and this district and the West River Valley is in a crisis mode, and us removing anything is not prudent to the continuing success of Leland and Gray. As far as the reimagining Leland and Gray, I was part of the back in Jamaica when we did the Act 46 committee, and we were hoping, Drew and I even were hoping that, and we talked about this, and I'm assuming this might be what you were talking about, how we would like to have more meetings, and we said maybe it's not the board that does it, it's a parental group of Leland and Gray that comes up with that information. That never happened. I would hope that that would continue to happen. I do not have time to head up anything like that, and there was a plethora of people who could take that on as well, and I'm sure we could probably get at least 5 people to show up to a meeting, I'm not sure, but I think it's important, and a lot of people did show up to those meetings consistently. I'm not gonna go into too much more detail other than the fact that I very much agree with the sentiment that the mental health and the whole child, that award that was given was because of the whole child and the whole looking of it. I understand we did not give Bob any specifics when we came up with trying to be prudent with the budget, as well as not having any golden cows, so that there was not anything that he didn't feel he couldn't touch. I personally felt that this is when the public would come in and have their say, and then we take that into consideration. And that's the point of us. We're all representing the public. I personally just agree with the sentiment, and I feel that I wish that there was more money that we could give, and I wish that we could make it a 1.0. But as we all know, we want to make sure Leland and Gray can continue, and that's our biggest concern. I don't think anyone here wants to not have a school here in the West River Valley.
Okay.
So sorry for mentioning specifics.
Okay, so we'll take that into consideration. And I think we probably need to put some time into tying some of the decisions that are made directly back to the vision that's been asked. To the vision and the mission statement, and revisit this at the next meeting. Anybody else? Yeah.
Projected tax implications of the budget for the next meeting?
Yeah. When will we get projected tax implications of whatever budget we do produce?
So as we discussed the last meeting, it's very early. We haven't even
Mhm.
actually
Oh, I know.
gotten the census
Right.
data back yet. So December 15th is when the equalized pupil comes out. We should be hearing, I would say, by December 1st, hopefully, maybe a little earlier, what the yield will be. My understanding from the last VASBO meeting that I was at, that because of the debt that the state is in, the ed fund, thank you, it will probably drive the yield down, which will drive tax rates up automatically, without any. That's what the adjustment will be. So that's where we're at. I wish I had more information.
So
for you.
early December would be the soonest we'd hear.
Really, that
Okay.
December
Which is
meeting.
the same.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know if there was any preliminary back of the envelope stuff that was available now. One can always hope, right? Thanks. Okay. So,
Joe, thank you everybody for
Thank
giving
you.
us the time to share our thoughts with you. I appreciate it a lot.
thank you.
Oh, well, before you guys go,
Yes, sir.
the date of the next meeting, because.
November 7th.
Okay.
And what's the date in December?
December will be,
That should be the regular schedule.
that should be the regular Tuesday. We had to move meetings because of people's schedules and
I wanna say
Bob and Bill's
December
schedules.
the 12th.
It will be December 12th.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll ask Kevin to do it tomorrow.
Okay, so moving right along, we need to. Is the solar contract a motion, Lori? Or we've already agreed to sign it, but there were edits to it.
I'm sorry.
The solar
Solar
contract.
contract.
Right, this is the consent form that is basically allowing, well, you're also signing to get $1,000 as well, but it also is.
Okay,
Sign
but
that.
we've already agreed to enter into this agreement. Do we
Yes,
need another
this is-
motion, or we just basically were like,
This is another
it's another
consent to
document?
assignment, so I think that you
Oh,
should
okay.
do a motion to have it
Okay,
signed.
that's what wasn't clear.
It's basically saying that NCOR can do the financing for the project.
So we need a motion to have the chair sign on behalf of the board, the document called consent to assignment.
You're making a motion.
I'm making that motion.
I'm seconding that
I
motion.
handed you the document.
So this is for the solar, in case anybody didn't hear, for the solar contract.
And it just allows financing to move forward?
Correct.
Okay.
Reassigning the financing.
So it's been moved and seconded to,
Move to authorize the chair to sign the consent form.
the consent to assignment, yes.
Consent to assignment form.
Got it.
Yeah.
Name's even on it, Joe.
Yeah,
Sign
yeah,
next to your name.
my name's right on there. So it's been moved and seconded to authorize me to sign this on behalf of Leland and Gray. Any discussion? Any discussion on that motion?
seconded?
I did.
Drew did.
Drew did.
Okay, no discussion. All in favor of the motion to have me sign this consent, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the
Thank you,
motion
Lori.
carries. Thank you. That one's done. Okay, I know buildings and grounds, you guys haven't met, so there aren't really any updates, right? But I know Bob wanted to talk
On my
about.
report, I put a tentative date under the facility dot there. If
Of November
I
17th.
figured if I threw it far enough out in the future, people would be able to make it, but no.
I can't make it.
I was hoping it'd be after we get the report back, but before budget adoption.
Is that the
was
week you
kind of-
want it? Is there another?
Well, I think any earlier than that, I might not have the report back. I could go the week after Thanksgiving if you'd rather do that.
It just happens to be a day I'm not here,
What's the, what'd you say the December date was?
December 12th.
All right, so yeah, so we could do it the week of the 4th. That would probably be good.
I could do the 4th or the 5th. Or the 7th.
4th, I am not available.
Yep.
Any other day that week I am.
6.
available.
6.
I could do the afternoon, I can't do one.
So I'm here, so you usually can't do the 6th the afternoon, Emily?
I can do the afternoon.
Twyla, is that,
I can do the afternoon.
is like at 12:30, 2:30, is that at work for you guys?
And you're buying lunch?
12:30 is after lunch,
12:30 is
that's not
after.
true.
Oh, Bill always feeds us.
I'll bring you, those cookies will be left still, I'll bring those. Say that again?
I'm working until about 12:30, 1:45 that day.
Oh, we can do 1 to 2:30, 1 to 3.
Yeah, that would work.
Does that work?
Yep.
1 o'clock on the 6th?
December 6th, thank you very much.
And there's a regular.
There's a WCSU meeting.
There's a
that night.
WCSU meeting that night.
That evening.
That evening.
1
All right. I don't believe we have any policy considerations. We need a motion to approve the bills and pay orders that were reviewed tonight in the amount of $459,771. There's 2 warrants for $70,002.97. And then there are payrolls totaling, the payrolls total $459,771.10, and I don't have a total of those 2. But you guys,
That's okay, because we've got them both separate.
yeah, they've been reviewed, checked. There any discrepancies, any problems at all? No. So I just need a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the warrants and pay orders. Any discussion on those? No? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. We should also approve the actions of the officers who reviewed the pay orders for the previous meetings when we didn't meet. I know it was Emily Twyland and I, a combination thereof. I think I got them all. But we would need a motion to just approve the actions of the officers in reviewing those pay orders. Again, no discrepancies on anything I saw.
Just for clarity, there were 2 of us reviewing all of them. It
Right.
wasn't just one of us going in and reviewing them, we had more than one of us, just like we do at a board meeting.
Right, it wasn't at the same time. Like I went in and did it, and then Twyla or Emily followed me, or Emily went in and I followed her. Whatever. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions about that whole procedure? Anything? All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the actions of the officers in reviewing those pay orders. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, folks. We have a consent agenda that contains the minutes of August 14th, our last actual meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with those minutes.
Second.
Emily and Drew.
Emily and Drew. There's no discussion on that, so all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Again, motion carries. Any other business, folks? Okay, we do need an executive session. It should be, yeah.
As we move forward with the budget process, I'd like to have a policy on comments so that we can get meeting time before 10 o'clock.
Could not hear that. Should I have?
Drew is proposing that we have a policy on public comment.
I don't think we need a policy, but we should have we should make that statement.
We need to.
We should talk about what that's actually gonna be and then just publicize it going forward, you know? I did try to get people who hadn't spoken to something to speak first, but, you know, multiple times speaking on the same issue does get lengthy.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with something.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what we need, but the meeting is the board's meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
he can,
we should have.
I'll do a little research and see if there's something out there that exists that we can use from another board so that we're not inventing something new.
Thank you.
And I will put that on as an
Bring it to the
agenda
next
item. I'll
meeting?
bring it to you, I'll bring it to the
Thank
next
you.
meeting before, and then we'll just let people know that that's gonna happen. Okay?
So, I kind of have a question, and I don't know if it's appropriate now, but, so, we had a pretty full house of people who knew about some of these, you know, line items before we even did the explanation of what was going on. How does that happen? Because I kind of feel like we were broadsided here.
Well, I obviously have to talk to the people who are impacted by the positions prior to coming here and being in the public, and so those people would share information.
So what this is a group of public who are friends of somebody that doesn't like the
Yeah.
news they're getting, which then comes to a meeting and accuses the board of things that we don't know
Yeah.
anything about.
It's really hard to do it any other way because I have to talk to the people.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. I was just trying to figure out how that all happened. We just got the paperwork
part
and
of contract.
Yeah, yeah, because there's a contract.
They wouldn't have known the specifics of the budget, they would have known about the reduction
Okay.
only.
Understood. Thank you.
Lori?
So would the board like me to put this draft up on the website and the narrative? After this?
Yes, I think so.
Yes. Okay.
Joe, you'll put
Yeah.
up that vision, this one of 2014. is-
Yeah, I'll get that
I
vision
cleaned this
to-
up because you don't need all the Stevenson notes on the top.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll clean it up.
What are you gonna put up on the web?
The
The-
first draft of the budget
Oh, good,
and the
thanks.
narrative put up on the Leland and Gray website.
Right. Okay, so we do need an executive session for, to discuss the possible.
So for two things, right?
Right, for two, well, it'll be two separate ones. We'll come out, we'll act, we'll go back in, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
let's do the TA first.
Do the TA first?
Yeah.
Okay, so we just need a motion to go into executive session to discuss a contractual matter.